You're sitting at a cafe, across from you someone is eating alone, no phone propped up, no book, no laptop, just them, their meal, and the world around them. Most people can't do that. Most people would rather skip the meal entirely than sit alone where others can see them. But this person, they're completely unbothered. Why? What kind of mind can sit in public solitude without performing distraction? Tonight, we explore the psychology of people who eat alone in public without apology. Every human culture shares meals, breakfast tables, dinner gatherings, lunch meetings. Food has always been communal. It bonds strangers. It seals deals, it marks belonging. Eating alone in public breaks that ancient pattern, and not everyone can handle the weight of that visibility. Some people don't really eat alone, they eat alone. Their phone is always out, always active, always providing an excuse. They scroll through nothing, they text nobody, they refresh feeds that haven't changed. Psychologically, the phone isn't a tool, it's a shield. It signals to everyone watching that I'm not alone by circumstance. I'm alone by choice, I'm occupied, I'm wanted elsewhere. These people can physically eat alone, but they can't emotionally handle being perceived as lonely. The phone creates a barrier between their reality and how others might judge it. It says, "Don't pity me, I'm busy." Deep down, they're managing social anxiety through performance. They're eating alone, but they're performing a connection. And the exhausting part, they know it. They feel the difference between actual solitude and performed distraction. But the alternative, being visibly, undeniably alone, feels more vulnerable than they can afford. Then some people genuinely prefer it. No performance, no anxiety, no shield. They sit down, order their food, and exist without apology. Psychologically, these are people with high self-sufficiency and low social dependency. That doesn't mean they're antisocial. It means their emotional stability doesn't require constant external validation. Most people experience what psychologists call the social baseline theory, the idea that humans regulate emotions better in the presence of others. But some people have internalized that regulation. They don't need someone across the table to feel calm. They've built an internal sense of security that travels with them. Eating alone isn't isolation, it's autonomy. These people discovered something powerful. Solitude and loneliness are not the same thing. Loneliness is the painful awareness of disconnection. Solitude is the intentional choice of your own company. And when you can sit with yourself in public, in a space designed for togetherness without needing to justify it, you've crossed a psychological threshold most people never reach. You've decided your presence alone is enough. For them, eating alone in public is often the most peaceful part of their day. No conversation to maintain, no social cues to monitor, no performance required, just observation, thought, presence. They watch people, they think. They enjoy their food without splitting attention. In a world that constantly demands you to be on, they've found a way to be off in public without shame. Some people who eat alone in public now couldn't have done it 5 years ago. Or even last year. They're not naturally comfortable with it. They're intentionally practicing it. These are the recovering people pleasers, the ones who spent years shaping themselves around others' expectations, who said yes when they meant no, who showed up when they wanted to stay home, who smiled when they were exhausted. Psychologically, eating alone in public becomes an exposure therapy for approval addiction. Every time they sit down without a companion, they're confronting a deep fear. What if people think I have no friends? What if I look pathetic? What if someone pities me? And every time they survive that moment, they reclaim a piece of themselves. This isn't about preferring solitude. It's about proving to themselves that they can exist without constant social validation. That their worth isn't determined by who's sitting across from them. That being seen alone doesn't mean being seen as less. For recovering people pleasers, that first solo meal feels like an act of rebellion. The 10th one feels like freedom. The 50th one, that's when they realize they've changed. They might still feel a flicker of self-consciousness when they walk in. They might still notice if someone glances their way. But they stay, they order, they eat. And slowly, meal by meal, they dismantle the belief that their value is determined by how surrounded they appear. This is psychological growth that looks ordinary but feels revolutionary. For some people, eating alone in public isn't about comfort or practice. It's about escape. These are people whose lives are filled with noise, people who are constantly needed, constantly performing social roles, constantly managing others' emotions. Parents, caregivers, managers, teachers, people whose entire day is spent being someone to somebody. Psychologically, they're experiencing what's called role fatigue, the exhaustion that comes from performing the same social identity without relief. At home, they're the parent. At work, they're the professionals. With friends, they're the listener, the helper, the glue. But when they eat alone in public, they're nobody, and that anonymity feels like oxygen. These people don't eat alone because they prefer solitude in general. They eat alone because it's the only space where no one expects anything from them. The cafe doesn't know they're a mother who hasn't slept. The restaurant doesn't know they just managed a crisis at work. The strangers around them don't need their attention, their advice, or their emotional labor. For 30 minutes, maybe an hour, they get to exist without a role. They can think their own thoughts, feel their own feelings, make decisions as small as what to order without considering anyone else's preferences. It's not about loneliness, it's about identity recovery. It's reclaiming the self that gets buried under everyone else's needs. And when they finish their meal and return to their life, they're a little more whole because they remembered who they are when no one's watching. Then there are the people who eat alone in public because they're studying humanity. These are the writers, the artists, the psychologists, the quietly curious. People who have realized that eating alone in public offers something eating with others never can: unfiltered observation. Psychologically, these are people with high openness to experience and strong pattern recognition. They don't just see a couple arguing 2 tables over. They see body language, power dynamics, and the moment one person decides to stop fighting. They don't just hear fragments of conversation. They collect accents, speech patterns, and the difference between what people say and what they mean. For them, eating alone isn't about solitude or escape. It's about immersion. When you're with someone, you're in the conversation. When you're alone, you're in the world. You notice the waiter's exhaustion, the child's quiet rebellion, the old man who orders the same thing every day. You see the architecture of human behavior in real time. These people have learned that loneliness and aloneness create different kinds of awareness. Loneliness turns inward, becomes self-focused, and is painful. Aloneness turns outward, becomes observational, rich. They're not avoiding connection. They're practicing a different kind of it, a connection to the collective human experience rather than one individual exchange. And here's what they've discovered. Some of the deepest understanding of people comes not from talking to them, but from watching them when they don't know they're being seen. Not in a creepy way, in a compassionate way, in a way that says, I see you carrying that. I see you trying, I see you being human. That kind of seeing requires space. And eating alone in public creates that space. So now the question returns, which one are you? The one who needs the phone as armor, who can't quite sit with being visibly alone yet. The one who genuinely prefers your own company, who discovered that solitude isn't loneliness. The one who's actively practicing, who's dismantling years of people-pleasing one solo meal at a time. The one who escapes into anonymity, who needs these moments to remember who you are beneath all your roles. Or the one who watches, who's collecting human moments like evidence of what it means to be alive. If one of these landed uncomfortably close, say it, write it in the comments. There's no wrong answer here. Understanding starts with recognition. Now zoom out. On one side of the restaurant, tables full of people. Laughter, conversation, shared plates, connection. On the other side, scattered throughout, are the solo diners. Both exist in the same space. Both are completely human. The people eating together aren't incomplete without solitude. They're building bonds, sharing stories, and creating memories. For some people, every meal shared is an investment in a relationship, and that's beautiful. But for the people who eat alone in public, it's something different entirely. It's not loneliness, it's not isolation, and it's definitely not something that needs fixing. It's a different relationship with presence. They don't believe you need someone across from you to justify taking up space. They don't require witnesses to validate their experience. They don't outsource their sense of belonging to who's sitting nearby. And maybe that's uncomfortable for some people because it quietly challenges the assumption that being alone in public means being unwanted, unsuccessful, or sad. But look closer. The person eating alone might be the most emotionally secure in the room. They might have deep friendships and a full life and simply prefer this meal to themselves. Or they might be learning to be their own companion, practicing the hardest relationship any of us will ever have, the one with ourselves. Society has taught us that visibility requires company, that being seen alone is something to avoid or explain. But these people learned something different. They learned that the opinion of strangers matters less than the quality of your own presence. That you can be completely alone and completely okay. That solitude in public is not a failure of connection, but a form of it, connection to yourself, to your thoughts, to the moment exactly as it is. Here's the truth that makes people uncomfortable. You can have everything, friends, family, love, community, and still want to eat alone sometimes. Because eating alone in public isn't about what you lack, it's about what you've found. Comfort in your own presence, freedom from constant performance, the ability to exist without justification. The people who can't do it yet aren't broken, they're just still learning that being alone and being lonely are different concepts. One is circumstance, the other is a choice, and the people who eat alone in public have learned to live in the second one without fear. So maybe the real question isn't whether you can eat alone in public, maybe it's this. Can you be with yourself without distraction? Can you sit in visibility without armor? Can you trust that your presence alone, without performance, without company, without explanation, is enough? Tell me what you think. Because somewhere between the crowded tables and the solo seats is where most of us are learning to exist. If this made you see something differently, hit subscribe. We explore the psychology that actually explains you. Don't forget to like the video, it helps more people find messages like this. I'll see you in the next one.